Right, I've got a question that we're going to put up because I think it's pertinent. Deborah posted this at 7:30 in the morning, so half an hour ago in the UK. Deborah's asking, why am I struggling to sleep on Carnivore?
Yeah, there could be a number of reasons. Look, there's a lot of adaptation processes going on when we gravitate into a carnivore-based lifestyle. And I think sometimes we see these success stories of people who have had these miraculous changes, and they're not miraculous. It's biology, and it's all explained when we look into the information. But some people seem to achieve these things incredibly quickly. But the reality is, these adaptations take a long time. We're coming from a lifetime of abuse, what a better term. And suddenly we expect everything just to fall into place with, a click of the fingers. But it does take time. So that's the first thing. And it can take a long time. But the biggest reason, or the two biggest reasons in my experience why someone would struggle with sleep on a carnivore lifestyle is hypoglycemia. Try eating something small before bed. It doesn't have to be sugar. It doesn't. So what people will quite often report is if they eat carb before they go to bed, they'll sleep. It's not the fact that it's carbohydrate. It's the fact that you just need something in there to elicit a small insulin response, and a small bolus of protein will elicit that response. It doesn't have to be a big meal, just enough. And it doesn't have to be directly before you go to bed either, just close enough to elicit that response to allow you to sleep. The other could be an electrolyte imbalance. When we gravitate into the lifestyle, there's a big shift in change in regards to electrolyte balance. Sodium in particular is lost in the early stages. Then we're told to add things like pink Himalayan and Celtic sea salt, and Celtic sea salt is by far better than pink Himalayan, by the way. And we can get into that, I'm sure, over the 24 hours. We've got plenty of time for my wobblings. But there's an electrolyte imbalance, so we overcompensate, or not overcompensate, but we compensate by adding in sodium. Excess sodium then depletes potassium. So now we have an electrolyte imbalance. We quite often take other supplements, maybe calcium, or consume products that are high in calcium, and this offsets magnesium. So it could be an electrolyte imbalance also.
Yeah, it's a good answer. I mean, there's so many variables to this as well, because one of the things, when I did my bloods and when we were doing the private blood test for over 10 years, one of the things you can do is you can look at levels at a cellular level of tryptophan. And tryptophan and all the other amino acids compete with each other, and you can deplete tryptophan in cells by introducing more amino acids. So the more amino acids, especially leucine, which is one we talk about in other factors, will deplete tryptophan into the cells. So I'm not saying tryptophan is the thing that makes you sleepy, but it's a precursor for things like melatonin, serotonin, and it does have an effect. And this is why I personally think one of the reasons Rich eating late at night helps him sleep is because he's got a perfect balance of amino acids. That's one of the things. And you need to not overconsume or underconsume, and it's just getting the fine balance. So that's going back to the adaptation. And you can look this up. You can look at tryptophan depletion in cells, and the method they use is actually by introducing more amino acids in different quantities, especially leucine. And if you have a huge quantity of leucine, for instance, then it will reduce the tryptophan in the cells. The other reason why carb tends to work before going to sleep, it isn't the carbohydrates, it's that little boost of insulin, which is, again, what Rich was saying there. If you eat anything, you will boost a little bit of insulin. So there's many different factors. It could be stress, it could be environment. I mean, obviously, I went to bed last night and I was thinking, wow, I've got 24 hours to do tomorrow, and I've got to listen to Richard for 24 hours. So, wow, big stress. And we've got all these questions which we don't know are going to come up. So, we've got to be on our toes for 24 hours. So did I sleep all right? I slept okay, but I had two dreams where, Jane said I was tossing and turning. And both of those were to do with being a bit stressed about something that I've got to do for a period of time. So if anyone's out there and into dream analysis, I dreamt that I was a taxi driver in the middle of Europe and had to start at 4 p.m. in the afternoon when it was really, really busy, which is totally nothing to do with my past whatsoever. And the second one was I was trying to get a plane, and it was really critical that I got my tickets to get home. I'd got out there. The whole dream was it was fine at the beginning, but by the end, I really had to get home, and I couldn't get the tickets because the two people that were serving me decided they had to go off and check something. 20 minutes I was at the desk, all frantic, and then some blokes came back and said, "Oh, they're in the cafeteria. They're having their coffee." Right, I'm in the middle of getting my tickets. So I woke up quite stressed, and even just talking about it is quite funny. I don't have that sort of dream very often, so I'm assuming that's something to do with the 24 hours. So,
yeah, I didn't sleep much.
Yeah, sleep has many factors.
I had a nightmare myself that I was late for this, and I had woken up at 10:30, and you were stressing, and I was rushing in. But yeah, it's a strange dream. But coming back,
I dreamt you got here at 10:30 as well.
Sounds about right. It's funny that you mentioned tryptophan there also, because tryptophan, which is a neurotransmitter and a precursor for serotonin and melatonin, tryptophan is activated when we consume sugar or carbohydrate. So when we consume sugar, because of insulin is elevated, and insulin drives or pulls all of the amino acids out of the blood except for tryptophan, leaving tryptophan available for synthesis. So just another factor there in regards to why the effect of insulin or carb may seem to elicit that response. But there's consistency is key. Just stick with it. There's a few little hints and tips there. I'm sure that everything will come to fruition. Just stick with it.
Okay, just a little bit of, again, housekeeping, which is really nice. Dale has become a new YouTube member, so that's great. Let's do Ribeye Rob. Good morning, Stephen. Let's get this party started. Of course, I know Ribeye Rob knows you as well, Rich. We have Keith Slurp giving us $5, which is fantastic. And the super chats can also get your question bumped up to the top. We will remind you that we're not doctors. All of our information is exactly that information, so you can go and do further research. We can't prescribe or de-prescribe any medications. It's always good to work with your doctor if you can, because they know your medical history left, right and centre. In saying that, we can also tell you things that maybe your doctors don't know, so you can then go back armed with a bit more information. So here we go. A 51-year-old male stopped TRT 2 years ago, carnivore diet since January, recent labs, total testosterone 896, free T 5.2, sex hormone binding globulin 84. How can I increase free testosterone while maintaining a meat-only diet? Supplements, ?
So this is quite common on a carnivore lifestyle. I had a similar conversation with a client of mine recently, Yari, whose testosterone is incredibly high, SHBG, sex hormone binding globulin, also very high. Look, it comes back to this is very much an individual thing, and Stephen, being the expert on bloods, can really go into this. But the ranges that we're given are for an average person, and we're not average. We're extraordinary, if you like. Our ranges are going to be differently. And when I look at my ranges in the beginning, the early days, my testosterone in particular increased for a number of years. Then it sort of tanked. And now it's starting to increase again. But not once during that time did I notice an inability to build muscle, or did I have a loss of energy. And I think the reason for this is the body becomes more efficient in the same way as it does with insulin. As we gravitate into a ketogenic carnivore lifestyle, we don't become insulin resistant. We become more insulin sensitive, but there's less insulin required to carry out said work, for example. So even though the free T is low, is it affecting your mood? Is it affecting your energy? Is it affecting your ability to grow muscle? And we know one of our guests who is coming on today, the incredible Sean Baker, has low testosterone, yet he clearly doesn't have a problem building muscle. So this is very much an individual thing there. Zinc is very important. Zinc and choline very important. All of which we can get from an animal-based diet in particular. But Steve, have you got any other thoughts?
Well, yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. The first thing is, you've got to look at symptoms, because the big thing about bloods is it's not about the numbers. It's not about that at all. It's about the person. As you've rightly said as well, don't forget all the ranges are based on people eating like a 60% carbohydrate diet, which we're not doing. Thirdly, when you're doing these measurements, and I touched on it briefly there with the tryptophan, what gets into your cells and what's in your blood, two different things, and sometimes it's what's in the cells that are important. So this way of eating, if you've got less inflammation, then most of the things that are going around in your serum are going to have entry into the cells a lot easier, so you don't need so much. And that's true of a lot of things, like, for instance, vitamin C, we need less because it doesn't compete with glucose. We need less T3, for instance, because there's no need to move pyruvate across the mitochondrial membrane to produce energy, because we're getting energy from fats. So when you talk about low free T3, I mean, firstly, what is it? I mean, it's the active form of testosterone. It's not bound to proteins. It's not bound to the sex hormone binding globulin, which is why I read that full thing out, or albumin in the blood. It's only 2%. Of your total testosterone. So, it's not such a big marker. It's 98% is bound to proteins, and they're bound to proteins for a reason, for transport and other things. So I'm not overly bothered when somebody says to me that they feel great. Certainly, we've been carnivore since January, which is still early days. I mean, I was very lucky because I was low carb for 3 years, 2 years keto, and then I went carnivore. And my keto time actually was very close to carnivore the more I got to the end of it. So at age 55, which was over 5 years ago, I decided to do a 30-day challenge and become carnivore. Well, my testosterone, because I was, doing the bloods as well, I was lucky enough to be able to get the bloods done. Within 3 months, it had gone up 30%. My testosterone on carnivore. So I was very lucky, but was it what was happening before? Obviously, there's loads of ways to look at increasing it if you really need to, but, are you obese? Are you having those symptoms that Rich mentioned there? Are you fatigued? Is there an actual problem? Do you have low libido? Do you have sexual, erectile dysfunction? Are you depressed all the time? If none of those things apply, then I wouldn't actually worry about the number. And I think this is going to be echoed throughout the whole 24 hours when people took up bloods. I know, I did over a decade of private blood tests, and I'm qualified phlebotomist, so I get a lot of questions, and I'm totally fine with that. But I do feel, I repeat myself a little bit, that you've got to look at the presentation, the symptoms, the clinical presentation, much more important than the numbers, because the numbers in the optimal ranges don't reflect this way of eating in many, many instances. But obviously, if you have low free testosterone, it's normally associated with excess body fat. You're not doing resistance training. So obviously do the flip of that. Do some resistance training if you want to increase it. Make sure you get enough sleep, manage your stress, and make sure you eat enough. And of course, Rich, as always, with the macronutrients and the micronutrients, zinc is really important, and vitamin D. So all fabulous information. I hope that was good. If you still want more information, you can book either myself or Richard for a private consultation. So did you want to add any further on that, Richard, while I get to the next question?
No, I think we've covered that. But as you say, zinc and vitamin D, super important. Super important.
Yeah. So I've got once a week man telling me that he's doing some stretching in preparation for this event. So let's have a look. Have you seen any questions that you thought were particularly good?
I haven't looked at the comments yet. Let's have a quick look.
Oh, here's a long-winded rant here, apparently. Oh, yes. Because they said, I've been strict carnivore. This is before this apology. I've been strict carnivore for about 4 weeks. I started in April, been a little yo-yo, down about 5K and 5 centimeters off the gut. I have PTSD and depression, although improving. Well, I don't think that's a rant. I'm missing my gallbladder, they say. Will high fat impact there? Sleep is still a little bit still as little as weaning off some meds. So missing the gallbladder, that's a common question. Will high fat impact that?
Yeah, so look, it doesn't mean that we can't live a ketogenic or carnivore-based lifestyle. The liver will upregulate its ability to create the bile anyway. But what I would recommend is less fat in the meals and more frequent meals. Gravitate over time. Don't go consuming too much fat. And that goes for anybody gravitating into the lifestyle also, because what happens is we consume a high bolus of fat that we're not used to, and bile is produced to emulsify the proteins and the fats. But the small intestine isn't used to reabsorbing, and that's what the small intestine does to the bile, and it ends up in the colon, which leads to toilet problems. So that's across the board. Gravitate slowly with the fats, but particularly if you have a missing gallbladder. So reduce the fats in your meal and try to eat smaller meals more frequently.
Oh, cool. Yes, and I think that comes up all the time, doesn't it? The thing about the gallbladder, and definitely you can adapt. It isn't things that are going to stop you. More frequency of meals and smaller meals. So the next question, let's have a look. I'll comment. Carlston here. Rich and Stephen show what's possible on Carnivore with this 24 hours. Impressive. Thank you very much. We haven't done it yet. Well, yeah, I know.
Do you know the first one? Last year, Steve, we did the first one, and sometimes when you do something for the first time, you don't realize how difficult it's going to be. And I think we did very well, but the last couple of hours we started to flail ever so slightly. Especially you were standing up for almost the full 24 hour, I believe, wasn't it? Which I can see you started again. But this time, remembering everything that we went through, this one seems a little bit more scary. So lots of support required. It does, yeah, it does for some reason. But I'll tell you why also. I was a big coffee drinker back last year, so I had a crutch. Caffeine, as you know, blocks the adenosine receptor, blocks our body's ability to tell us that we're tired. So this helped me massively last year, and I am now coffee-free. So what I'm drinking here now is my electrolytes. So no coffee. So yeah, this is new territory for me. Support required.
Well, I think one of the things people like about us is we're honest and we don't pretend that we are something but we're not. If we go off track, then we'll mention it. And if we artificially stimulate ourselves with coffee, I mean, both of us have actually said we've been wrong, actually, about coffee. Because I was quite blasé about it, because there were people that I've coached and myself not having any issues with coffee. And then once I ramped up my five-a-side soccer, yes, at age 60, I was still playing football, and I added in a couple of extra sessions, which was coaching, because I'm a consumer as well as a coach. So I did some football coaching. I noticed that I was getting pain in my knees and in my feet, actually, and I thought my football boots were too small. Now, the reason I mention that is because as soon as I took even the Swiss Water decaf coffee out of my diet, my boots were not too small. So that shows there was some inflammation in my feet I didn't even know I was aware of. And I think taking out the coffee, even Swiss Water decaf, so it's even decaffeinated, has made a difference to me. I have less aches and pains after training. I do think you're right, Rich, that it's an accumulative effect of the acrylamides. I absolutely agree with that, because I had no caffeine. And I had the best thing you can have. The Swiss Water process is the best way of getting the caffeine out, and I still had a problem. And I have experimented with reincorporating it. The pains come back, taking it out, pains go away. So it's pretty nailed on that it isn't any other thing. It's definitely the fact that I've taken the coffee out.
Yeah, and
or the not the caffeine. I want to make that clear. It was Swiss Water decaf. Yeah, carry on. Sorry.
And I think your coffee was mycotoxin free also. Is that right?
Yeah. Oh, so absolutely. Yeah.
The same effects from acrylamide can be seen through mycotoxin. So it can't be the mycotoxin with you. So it must therefore be the acrylamide. And we can get into what acrylamide is a little bit later if you like, or we can do it now. It's up to you. But it's It's not a good thing. It's not a good thing.
It's not a good thing. No. Just for people to know that 8:30 we've got the Kent Carnivore coming on. I was born in Kent, as it's Lee Copus. And if you don't know him, he's fantastic. And we'll be talking about why he went carnivore and all of his things. So I'm going through the chat here, just making sure we haven't missed too much. Now, this is one of the big changes as well, because last year we were struggling for comments, and this year we literally have hundreds. So,
Fantastic.
Right, here's an interesting one, because Diane is saying, how on earth have I put weight on? The scales have gone up. I'm strict carnivore. Now, I've tidied my room, so I haven't got my props close to hand, but I'll get my props. because fat, that amount of fat weighs the same as that amount of muscle. So if you're confused about putting on weight on the scales, it could be because actually, you've gained some muscle, but you won't look all blobby. In fact, like when you're on high carb, you might look actually better with a little bit of extra weight. You could be doing the wrong things. You could be over-consuming water. You could have an electrolyte imbalance. You could be having too much fat for you. You could be eating too much. You could be eating at the wrong frequency. Too late at night for you. This is one of the things. We all have these haplotypes, which is about, where we were born or where our ancestors were born. We do have different physiology. Some of us really thrive on skipping breakfast. Some of us really need to have breakfast in the morning. So if there's an influence out there saying this is the thing to do, right, it's the thing to do for them and most of the people they coach, but it doesn't mean it's the thing to do for everybody. So if Rich and I decided we wanted to be minted, all right, we would stop talking about carnivore, and we would do a very broad brush approach, and we would do something that we probably was okay with, 100% with, but what am I talking about? So we would go totally low carb, or we would go the other way, go high carb, and we would sell stuff that would make us a lot of money but not get you very fit. Whereas we try to be very nuanced, spend the time with you, and actually talk about what's interesting for you as a person. So Diane, I would, if it's really worrying you, I would do coaching. But if it isn't, you could become part of our school community, for instance. There'll be a link in the chat for that. It's $4 a month. So over the year, that works out less than $1 a week. And you can join 400 plus people, members, all with questions like this. And we can give you lots of advice. There's loads of free courses. There's loads of information and loads of answers already online to these sort of questions. We've got free ebooks and everything like that. So there'll be a link in the chat for that. But if the weight goes up, all of those things are possible. Overeating is possible on this. It's unlikely and it is difficult, but it can be that particular problem. It can be the macros are not quite right. Definitely. You could, if you're eating high fat, reduce the fat and go to 1-to-1 by weight. You could even go higher protein and lower fat and just see if that works. But give everything a chance, like 6 weeks. So hopefully, Diane, that has helped you there. Right. Let's have a look at the next one. I am going through all these questions. Right, so somebody is asking, right, wait, is everyone doing a 24-hour stream right now? Ken Carnivore is doing one too. I'm confused. Right, okay, how it works is we are not protective. We are very much, if people are going to be our guests, then we can give them the keys to the kingdom. They can do it to their own channel. So although I set this StreamYard link up for me, Richard has his own one, and Lee has his own one, and Jonathan's got his own one, and Chafee's got his own one. But it all originates from here. But the good thing is, you see, because many, many more people have subscribed to Anthony Chafee's YouTube than ours, he will do it directly to his channel because he's got all these people that haven't bothered to subscribe to Rich and myself because, we're in the UK and they're quite happy just subscribing to Anthony. So that's how that's working for those that are confused. Lee should be popping into the studio any moment at 8:30. I thought he might be in a little bit early, but there you go, he hasn't come. So last year, to my eternal shame, when I look at the playbacks, I was a bit disconnected as I am now, because there's so much going on, so many comments, so many guests we've got to get in. So if I miss one of your questions or comments, I do apologise. And as if by magic, and early as you like, he's sitting there looking wonderful in the full glow of the wonderful Kent sunshine. Here he is, Lee.
Oh, how you doing?
How are we doing, man?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm just lucky that I get the freshest Richard and Stephen.
Thank you so much for listening to my podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. Your support means the absolute world to me, and if you're enjoying this show, I've got a small favour to ask you. I'd be incredibly grateful if you would consider becoming a supporter and make a small monthly donation. Your contribution will really help to improve the show. I'll be able to improve the software, maybe put a few more episodes out, and do many things that I'm hoping to do in the future. Do them a lot quicker. So, it's a small monthly contribution. You can cancel at any time, and the link is in the show notes. Thanks very much for listening.